All right. Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, Suhana. And look, it's wonderful to be here today. It's fantastic to be connecting with everybody in this particular conference. And welcome to Stefan. Really looking forward to talking to you today about your background, about your pathway through your career, and about some of your observations. Well, first of all, how are you today, Stefan? And why don't you just give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, FinTech Connect, for the organization and the invitation to this event. I'm really glad to participate, even if I'm a bit farther away in London. I'm Stefan Malray. I'm the head of market structure and the innovation for the financial market business of ING. So what does that mean in 2 words? The market structure piece is really working with industry bodies, working groups, regulator, policymaker to change of what we see happening in the world in terms of regulation, but in terms of market structures as well. And the innovation piece is what we learn from those change events and how we adapt and prepare the bank for the futures. My focus is really on the market activity of ING, so which is part of the investment bank, the wholesale bank, as we call it at ING. So more our clients are large corporate clients and financial institutions where we trade FX, money market products, commodities product, equity derivative product, and fixed income products.
Fantastic. Look, and it's wonderful to have you here for this opening session of the conference. You know, we're also connected these days, aren't we? It's you know, me here in Hong Kong, you in London, and our audience all over Asia and all over the world. So look, I always like to sort of get into these sessions, finding out a little bit about the story behind the man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Stefan? How did you how did your career end up landing you in this particular role for ING?
Yes, and I, as you can probably hear from my accent, I'm French. I work for a Dutch bank, so I'm based in London. So my career was very international, and I think this is what brings a lot of curiosity for me, as well as to try to learn from others and peers. I work most of my career between New York and London. I joined ING 6 years ago. My background is more about electronic trading, electronic communication, where I did that for almost 20 years. I used to work at JP Morgan for 10 years and Societe Generale, a French bank, for 8 years, and then ING. And really, this was for the last 20 years, a drive toward digitalization in the way we electronify our market activities and business. How do we trade electronically through trading venues or directly through single dealer platform? My role in the last 3 years, which is more focused on the word innovation, is around 3 types of topics. First is innovation we do internally at the banks, and how do we innovate ourselves? So we create some fintech company within the bank as part of our innovation lab, and sometimes it's just for us, and sometimes we do spin outs to the market from those. The second way we innovate is we do a lot of collaboration effort with peer banks. Our clients, where we see a common problem for our industry and we want to automate that problem, and to be able to be successful, we do it as a collaboration effort. And we really believe in that at ING, is that we don't see other banks as competitors. We see them as peers, where we can continue to improve our processes together. And the third way we innovate is really working with fintech companies. So try to find, you know, fintech companies, the beauty of it is they are small and nimble, and they go extremely fast compared to a large bank organization who may go slower. So trying to find the right fintech, and either we do a partnership with them where we become their clients, or we help them to grow as part of an acceleration lab, or we invest in them. We did around between 30 and 40 investment in fintech companies in the last few years.
Well, you've certainly, you know, I think landed yourself a career in a very, very profitable industry, investment banking, doing some really exciting, fun stuff like innovating, working with new companies, looking at investments. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience here who are maybe new in their career, and they're kind of wondering how you set yourself up for this. Which university did you start in, and where did you, if you go all the way back, what did you study that kind of set you on this path and gave you the I guess the passion to do this in your full-time job?
Yes, of course. So this is I did a computer engineering university in France, and when at the last year of that university, you have to do a long internship, and I was lucky enough to be able to find an internship in New York to do that. And my English was really bad, to be honest. So don't be afraid if you don't have the language. I learned it on the go, on the desk, or watching TV at night, and it works. And I think from there, my passion about a new type of technology and learning from others came about. And I think what is important and why I landed those type of job is you have to do something will really drive you and make you passionate about it. And over the years, so my first probably 10 years my career was pure in technology, learning how to be a project manager, a developer, a tester on different program. And then I moved into what we call the front office, so the business line who runs those market activity, probably now 20 years ago. And this is really when I learned how to use technology to develop a business. And this was the beginning of that electronification of some of those business. A lot of time, what we used to trade with very large clients, we used to do it purely over the phone. Now it's less and less a phone activity, is over a chat system, or through electronic trading venues where we have to develop electronic pricing engine to create a price, a way to electronically develop algos to manage the risk for the bank or to hedge ourselves on the market. So I think what drove me there is this drive to learn, to be passionate at work and to be curious, right? Working with fintech companies, you have to find them. You have to know which one are going to work, which one are not going to work for you. So it's trialing and error, right? Innovation is hard as well. So what we learn is it's a great job. I love what I do, but don't be surprised. It's very hard to make it happen. You fail a lot more on your face than you succeed. And this is something that in the banking industry or in finance industry, we were not used to. It. Failing was a failure. A lot of people lost their job if they were failing at what they do. In innovation, you have to learn from it. And so the first few mistakes that you do are hard to understand for your motivation, for your boss, or for the bank itself. So you try to make them as early as possible to be able to learn from it and make the next experiment a bit better. So a long career, but ending up in a place where I really enjoy what I do. Yes.
No, it's fantastic. I think it's really important to sort of really set that scene and set the stage in people's minds as, in terms of the culture of trial and error, the culture of experimentation, the culture of falling in love with technology, but not trying to force fit technology into the wrong the wrong solutionized areas or the wrong customer solutions is really important. So let's sort of dive into sort of the challenges that we face today. Tell us a little bit about the difference between some of the traditional banks that you've worked in and ING, or some of the more digital banks. What is the difference in culture? What is the difference in technology? What are the differences in capabilities that you see between those really traditional businesses and the businesses that are really growing, thriving, and scaling today?
Yes, and I live that through. ING has a very strong culture about innovation and digitalization from probably 25 years ago, when they create the third pure online bank. In fact, the first one was a phone banking in Canada, and then they started, when the internet started to grow, to do online banking in different countries at ING. But ING is also the biggest bank in the Netherlands and a traditional bank per se with branches, etc. So we see both worlds in ING. But what was the differentiation factor compared to the other bank I worked before that? It's that cultural mindset, to be able to see innovation, transformation, digitalizations as a way to do business, and not to be afraid to go after it and to try. It started mainly within the retail bank, which is much more advanced into that pure digital banking experience. And what we see, it's a little bit like the fintech company, right? You can go a lot faster when you have a blank sheet of paper and you design something from scratch. And when we launched a bank in the Philippines, for example, a pure digital bank, we did it in 9 months. You cannot do that with a traditional banking model. We did that very fast because we reused some of the components that we had. We knew about which fintech company could help us to do that. So there is a mindset in the ING, in the retail banking arm, to look at data, to look at technology, to go fast, to learn. And this mindset became a bit part of the DNA of the bank around all the other parts of the bank. So it's about technology, operation, legal, finance, sales, trading, and they all look and have some piece of this DNA of the bank that other banks probably don't have yet or try to go. It's not easy to change the culture of a very large organization. But if you do it over time, then you end up with this very strong culture. The second thing that I saw at ING is that it's really focused on the people. People stay quite a long time. We have a very low turnover at ING because they know each other, they work well between each other. There is a culture of respect between each other, which is very strong, and people help each other that way. It's part of the what we call the orange code of ING Bank that we have to help each other to succeed. And we do that with our clients as well. The way we approach our client is to try to help them to succeed in their life or in their business. So that culture element, I think it's critical and very important to have.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I think it also makes it a really enjoyable place to work, right? If you love working with your colleagues, if you love coming to work and bringing your passion to work, and you get satisfaction out of that, then it's evident that you're going to stay a long time and you're going to add a lot of value to the business. So, good for people is good for business.
Yes.
And so you mentioned a blank sheet of paper. You mentioned about how when you're building a new business or a new type of bank, that you are able to use new technologies. You're able to be born in the cloud. You're able to think about the business with data analytics from day one, rather than measuring after the fact. Talk a little bit about some of the technologies and the capabilities that you've seen really drive success in the bank today. What are some of those fundamentals that are sort of really core and underlying the success of the business?
Yeah, so we tried several new type of technology over the last few years, but I think the one was the most interesting for us was the adoption of AI and focusing a lot more on the data analytics that we did in the past. And I think from that, our industry in banking and the investment banking or the wholesale banking, it's still in very early stage compared to other industry, right? If you look at the consumer industry, at the airline, the travel industry, etc., they use data a lot more than we do in banking. In banking, we on the positive side, we have a lot of data. We store a lot of data from our client transaction, etc. But this data is broken into silos who don't connect to each other very well. So the first thing for us was very important in early stages. How do we get access to this data? How do we normalize this data? Can we play with this data? And then the second layer was how do we push the AI methodology that are available now to better understand our activity, better understand our client data, and then develop product on top of that. Either product for our clients or product for ourselves. And so we are making progress in this AI space, and I think it's very good. Something on the AI space, we started first to develop that capabilities on the retail part of the bank. And then something, because of our DNA, this came part of the focus area in the wholesale bank as well. The second thing that ING did quarterly is to focus on digital ledger technology and DLT. And this was an experiment 5-6 years ago when people were still trying to understand if this type of technology could be leveraged into the banking world. We didn't know if it was scalable, if it was robust enough, if it will work. There was a lot of talk about Bitcoin, etc., but not too much about the technology underneath and how we could reuse that technology. And from that, I think we worked very well to develop some either industry working groups with other banks or working as well with fintech company to try to experiment on those processes. And the one we succeed the most was in trade finance, where in trade finance, we found a way where the current process was very manual, still very paper-based, and it was a perfect target to be able to replace those paper with a digital ledger technology platform. It was not high throughput in terms of number of transactions, but it was very secure and be able to share within a closed network. So we did work on that. And now we are going to the third stage to say, now that the technology is mature, we can go to even more transaction and more different use cases. So we are evaluating those use cases as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic case study to sort of talk about, because obviously you mentioned at the very beginning in the introduction that ING Bank is a very collaborative bank. The banking system is also it can be both very competitive, but also very collaborative. And banks also need other banks to face off against each other's for different customer needs and requirements. And in the case of the DLT example, ING and HSBC worked very well together in that instance. So I love that particular case study. But I wanted, perhaps you can talk a little bit more about some of these other case studies. You mentioned specifically building new banks in new markets like the Philippines, and perhaps you could sort of talk about the creation of that new bank in the Philippines, how that came about, and some of the both the cultural aspects or the technology aspects that led to success in building that bank.
Yes, and so I was not heavily involved into that creation because this was more retail bank and I'm more on the investment bank side. But what I watched from a bit from my seat on that creation was the speed of how they did it, the processes that they used to create the bank, and the technologies that they used to create the bank. And I think one criteria as well was they dedicated a team of people to work on that project. So they have very clear focus to be able to develop that activity very fast. So the governance was clear, the budget allocated was clear, the people dedicated to it was clear. They had strong support from the management of the bank to do it, and they could reuse some component of technology that we had either in the bank or that they could bring from outside working with fintech companies. So when you put all that in line and everybody is very aligned to those objectives, then you can go very fast and you can grow your business very well. Other examples that we do are more complex is how you do it not from a big blank sheet of paper, but you have an existing business running and you try to evolve. So that's things we try to do in the investment bank side. For example, currently we are working with a fintech company to try to visualize the client trading activities that we do using AI model. Try to understand when a client is starting to trade less with us, when we should start to call them, to bring some alert to the sales staff, to put reason for action. What are the right reasons to call a client? Because a product may be more interesting for him at this time, because he needs to do a new hedge or he needs to rebalance his portfolio. And this is interesting because you are going through new type of activities and new insights on your client business based on the existing models that you have in place. So that's why we have to, it's a bit more complex because we have to interface the new technology with the existing legacy technology of the bank. We have to reformat the data. We have to be a lot more data driven, and we have to change a bit some of the culture of people who are not used to look at their client activity into that new way of working. So it married a culture experiment with a technology experiment, and try to move to a cloud hosting environment if I want to do something a bit more complicated, where we have to put, data in the cloud, working how it will work in the cloud, and test all of that based on our existing technology. So this gives you two examples, one on the retail side where you can go very fast on a blank sheet of paper, and one where you do it on top of an existing stack of technology with existing process and procedures that you have to work with.
Thank you very much, Stefan. That's fantastic. And I think we're only really scratching the surface on your career and on some of the things that you've helped build with the ING team. But as we sort of come to the end of this first panel, this introductory session for the conference, I wanted to just ask you if there are a few takeaways, a few tips, or a few sort of lessons that perhaps you've learned over the years that you want to share with the audience, and before we wrap it up and then send all the participants on to our next amazing speaker.
Yes, I think so. What I learned in my journey, and I hope I can share with others, and what I see at ING that I didn't see in other banks as well, is that be curious, right? Don't hesitate to look around to see what others are doing, to talk to people about your problem. 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, a lot of people were trying to be very hidden into their way of working, to say, this is a secret sauce that we have. And even some fintech companies that I meet sometimes say, well, we cannot talk to you about what we are doing right now, because we are still not. I don't believe too much in that. You have to really try to talk to people to validate your assumption, to try to see, even for you or for the business you are trying to push or for the technology you are trying to push, to see if it will work or if it will. Because the faster you learn, the lesson, what will work, what will not work, the better you will be in your career or in the way you want to succeed for your culture. So be curious is very important. Don't hesitate to take risk. It's part of our model to be able to take risks. You have to measure the risk, but you have to be able to take risk and to know where you are going, and experiment, either as we do within your own organization, but also externally with fintech companies to partner and work with them. So those will be my 3 takeaways for today.
Amazing. Wow, look, I think that pretty much gets us to the end of this introductory session. I really want to say thank you, Stefan. It's really been a pleasure to work with you for this panel. It's amazing to hear where you got started, how you got into this. Hopefully, it's an inspiration to many of the younger in our audience today who are maybe starting their careers in Asia or in banking. Hopefully, it gives them some confidence that there are some people within big businesses like ING and big banks who are thinking creatively, applying agile mindset and some of these more innovative ways of building new products and features in the business, and it might attract them to come and work in the sector again. So with that, let me say thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful, and I'll pass it back to Suhana. Thanks, Suhana. Over to you.